Hello, everyone, and for those joining us from the many corners of the globe, a good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. My name is Matt Katz, and I'm the Vice President of Business Consulting at Merced Systems, and I'll be your host for today's session, The Case for Service to Sales. It's my job to help Merced clients accelerate their return on investment and learn from the many talented companies that are part of the growing Merced Systems user community. That means I also spend time looking for thought leaders and content that is most relevant to solving the challenges and opportunities faced by these same companies. I'm very pleased to be joined on the program by a friend and longtime colleague, Andy Elkind, Vice President of the Elkind Group based in San Francisco, California. Andy specializes in helping companies define their sales and service strategies and execute those strategies effectively on the front line. He's worked extensively with organizations that have needed to implement strategic sales and service initiatives in response to changes in the competitive landscape or the regulatory climate. Andy earned his undergraduate degree in philosophy and psychology from Yale University. He earned his master's degree in organization management and development and a certificate in evidence-based coaching at Fielding Graduate University. In addition, Andy holds an associate certified coach designation from the International Coach Federation. Andy, thanks very much for joining today.
Well, Matt, thanks so much for inviting me. It's great to be here and to have this opportunity to talk with you and your Merced clients from all over the world.
Andy and I want to thank all of you for taking the time from your busy schedule to join Merced Systems and the Elkind Group for this discussion. We're really excited to see so many people joining this live session, representing many great companies across many industries and geographies, and we expect you will get value from both the material we share and through the questions you submit. To make this as interactive a session as possible, we'll save time for your questions and some discussion with Andy at the end of today's presentation. We strongly encourage you to submit both your questions and comments via the WebEx Q&A panel. You'll find the Q&A panel on the WebEx Meeting Manager toolbar located in the lower right of your screen. Simply enter the question or comment and hit send, and we'll hope to address as many of these today. Note that a full recording of this material will be made publicly available so that you can easily refer to the slides with the specific advice and insights we share. Before we kick off the presentation, I'd like to make a very brief introduction to our companies on our company's behalf. Merced Systems is the leading provider of enterprise sales and service performance management solutions that drive business execution for customer-facing functions. Merced Systems has deployed more than 800,000 licenses worldwide throughout a range of industries including financial services, insurance, telecommunications, healthcare, life sciences, travel, and consumer electronics. We're the only independent service and sales performance management company to be profitable for 9 straight years, and we've continued to expand our customer base in 2011. We believe that our profitability and growth is a testament to the relevancy and value of our solutions in helping organizations increase revenues, reduce operational costs, and improve customer experience. Andy, why don't you introduce us to today's session?
Okay, thanks so much, Matt. Well, today's topic is the case for service to sales. We're going to look at management practices that are meeting the challenge of driving revenue through the organization's service channels, including the contact center. Matt and I are excited for the opportunity to share some of our experiences in helping companies accomplish this transformation. So let's get started. Service to sales is not a new concept. In fact, at the Elkind Group, we've been working for more than 25 years with organizations that have been trying to get their frontline customer service representatives to recognize opportunities and increase revenue by selling to customers. But in today's challenging economic climate, the service to sales transformation is more attractive than ever. Every business is looking to do more with less, and every business is looking at creative ways to grow top-line revenue. Now, for those of you who are considering the opportunity to drive revenue through your service team, there is a strong case for making a transition from service to sales and service. For one thing, your service representatives are already talking to your customers. This is a natural opportunity to educate customers on your products and services. If representatives are helpful and friendly, they have already established rapport and credibility. Representatives understand your products and services, and the service conversation enables them to understand the needs of your customers. It's an ideal sales situation. And finally, the process of generating revenue is not much different than the process of providing world-class service. And there's more. Recent research into customer loyalty and likelihood to recommend provides another reason to consider a service-to-sales transformation. For many years, the conventional wisdom in the customer service field has been that it's not enough to just satisfy a customer. To increase loyalty and get a customer to recommend a business to someone else, we have to delight the customer by exceeding their expectations. It turns out that this widely accepted view is not exactly correct. We're indebted to our colleague John Goodman at TARP for sharing the findings of their latest research into the factors that increase loyalty, the likelihood that the customer will buy from you again and will recommend your business to someone else. Now, on this next slide, here are 5 activities that have been proven to have a positive impact on customer loyalty and likelihood to recommend. One of the 5 is, in fact, to go above and beyond and exceed the customer's expectations. And there are 4 other activities, too. We're not going to stop the program, but please take a moment to review the list and decide in your own mind which activity is most effective. I'll give you just a moment to do that. And the answer is, well, as you can see, for your convenience, we actually rank them in order. So if you want to increase a customer's loyalty and likelihood to recommend your business, it turns out that the most effective thing you can do is to educate the customer about how to avoid problems or get more value out of a product or service. That's followed by just providing consistently good service. In third place is to tell the customer about a new product or service that fills a genuine need. Now, those of you who maintain a very strong focus on employee productivity and average handle time may be dismayed to see that the 4th most effective activity is simply to have a brief and personal interaction with the customer about something other than the basic transaction. All of these activities are more powerful than exceeding the customer's expectations. Now, how much more powerful? Let's take a look. As you can see, the top 4 activities are all more than twice as effective as going above and beyond to exceed the customer's expectations. So here's the bottom line. If you are interested in increasing customer loyalty and likelihood to recommend, then there is a strong case for considering a service-to-sales transition in your organization. 2 of the best ways to increase loyalty are to educate customers about how to get more out of a product or service and to tell customers about a new product or service that fills a genuine need. Now, I mentioned that we have more than 25 years of experience in helping organizations make the transition from service to a blend of sales and service. During this time, we've worked with companies in a wide variety of industries, from telecommunications, wireless, and cable TV, to travel and hospitality, financial services, and many others. Some of these companies provided service in face-to-face situations, and others provided service over the phone, through email, and chat. We've used that experience as the basis for our book, Service to Sales, Changing Culture and Mindset in Your Call Center. The book is subtitled 8 Tips for Building a Successful Sales and Service Organization, and in just a moment, I'll provide a quick overview of the 8 tips. But before we get into those specifics, I do want to provide an overall good news, bad news message about attempting a service-to-sales transition. The good news is that you can be successful in making a transition from pure service delivery to a combination of sales and service. The bad news, or at least the not-so-good news, is that this transformation can be challenging. You have to accomplish a complete change of culture and mindset at every level of the organization. You need to commit effort and resources over an extended period of time. And you need to take a comprehensive and systematic approach that addresses people, processes, systems, and tools. So, with that background, let's take a look at the 8 tips for a service-to-sales transformation. They are: create your blueprint, lead from the top, get your managers into the game, train your representatives to succeed, create a buzz, make it a way of life, keep it exciting, keep it fresh, and challenge your sales strategy. Let's take a closer look. The first key is to create your blueprint and take the time to plan the service-to-sales transformation. Now, as you plan, the first issue to address is your sales strategy. The term sales strategy can sound complex, but it's really about asking and answering 4 questions. What are you selling? To whom? When? And how? You see, selling is a percentage business, and any sales attempt requires additional time and resources. To maximize your ROI, you have to think critically about which products or services you want to sell, which of your customers represent the best prospects, what circumstances present the best opportunities, and which kind of sales approach will be most effective. It's also very important to assess your organization's readiness to change. What are the current attitudes towards selling? Are your managers and representatives ready, willing, and eager to sell? Or is selling something they view with a combination of fear and loathing? You also have to identify the expectations and metrics that will define success. We have found consistently that measurements do drive performance, and what gets measured gets done. It may be tempting to look for one sales metric that simplifies performance down to a single number, but in our experience, this is almost always a mistake that ends up encouraging behaviors you don't want. We always urge clients to develop a balanced scorecard. The second key is to lead from the top. The only sustained and successful service-to-sales transformations that we've seen have been led by senior leaders who were passionate and deeply committed to change. People working in a call center or in any large frontline service organization tend to see major organizational change as something that is imposed on them for no clear reason. So leadership needs to build the case for change by helping the front line understand the factors that are driving change in your business. Many change efforts tend to focus on the burning platform that is creating the urgent need to change. In our experience, that's not enough. It's also important to consider how we're going to make the transition from where we've been to where we're going. And it's also important to hold out a positive but realistic vision of the future, a destination postcard. You have to balance optimism with realism. Even if your transformation is successful, you may not be able to guarantee job security or higher compensation, but you may be able to help your people learn new skills that will make them more valuable and more employable in your business or at another company. The third key is to get your managers into the game. In a transition from service to sales, many companies are surprised to find that the greatest resistance comes from the first and second line managers. But if you stop to think about it, that shouldn't be surprising. In many service organizations, these line managers have come up through the ranks. They were promoted because of their proficiency as representatives. But when you transition to sales, they are suddenly in a position of leading and coaching a function that they did not fulfill themselves. For example, chances are that your first and second line managers don't have the sales skills they'll need to be effective. This means that managers will need to go through the same sales training as their reps. The managers should complete the training first, and they should participate in or co-facilitate as many training sessions as possible, because the best way to learn something is to teach it to someone else. The management team also needs to acquire sales leadership and coaching skills. Managers need to understand the difference between evaluation and coaching. They need to adopt the coaching mindset of continuous improvement, and they need to learn new ways to build awareness and gain buy-in from their representatives. Line managers also need to develop their change management skills. They need to learn how to lead people through the inevitable stages of the transition process, and they need to recognize and reinforce the positive side of resistance. The fourth key is to train your representatives to succeed. Customer service reps often regard sales and service as very different, but it's easier to create change by building on current strengths than by trying to get people to do something that's completely new. There's actually a lot of overlap between the skills required to provide great service and the skills required to be a successful salesperson. And this overlap provides an opportunity for you to build a bridge from service to sales. Now, there is a knowledge component to selling, and there's also an attitude component. But in the final analysis, selling is a skill, and the only way to learn a skill is to practice. Now, you may have heard the old expression, practice makes perfect. Well, it's not exactly true. Practice makes permanent. If you practice something, you'll learn it. But if you practice it wrong, you'll learn it wrong. And that's why feedback is such an important element in practice. The best sales training provides representatives with lots of realistic practice, and it teaches them how to give and receive effective feedback so they can help themselves and each other to continue to improve. Key number 5 is to create a buzz. You want to ensure that your representatives leave training feeling committed, comfortable, and confident, and that they put their new skills to work on the job right away. The participation and support of the management team is the single most important factor in assuring the transfer of training from the classroom to the job. Your managers need to take a focused and active role before, during, and after the training. Before the training, managers should meet with their representatives to explain why, what, and how. Why is the organization undertaking this service to sales initiative? What will the representatives be expected to do? And how will the managers work to help the reps to meet these new expectations? During the training, managers should participate in or co-facilitate as many sessions as possible. And after the training, managers should meet individually with each representative, address questions and concerns, and review how they'll monitor, coach, and develop to help the reps succeed. Key number 6 is to make it a way of life. A successful service-to-sales transformation depends on effective coaching by your first and second line managers. Your first line managers need to spend about 50% of their time coaching, and they need to spend this time really coaching for improved performance, not just keeping score or cheerleading. Now, if you ask frontline managers if they are coaching their representatives, most of them will say they are. But if you ask the representatives, you hear a different story. From their perspective, managers are evaluating rather than coaching. If managers are really coaching, they are improving results and developing people by changing thoughts, beliefs, and behaviors. They're focused on the future because they know that they can't change the past. They're trying to achieve small wins by working on one area at a time. And they're relying on two-way communication because they know how important it is to gain buy-in and commitment to change. If you think about people who coach sports, they really do two different kinds of coaching, during practice and during the game. Both kinds of coaching are important in a service-to-sales transition. Coaching during practice happens when a representative is not talking with customers and performing actual work. When managers coach during practice, they can focus on product knowledge, technical information, and sales skills. Coaching during the game involves working with a representative who is talking with customers and performing actual work. The focus here is on helping the representative perform the work successfully and hopefully make the sale. There is also an opportunity to observe how the rep interacts with system tools and to model in real time specific skills that the rep may be able to use going forward. Key number 7 is to keep it exciting, keep it fresh. Buying is an emotional decision, and customers will take their emotional cues from the service or sales representative they're talking to. If the representative is excited, enthusiastic, and confident, the customer is going to feel the same way. So if you want representatives to perform at their best, a sales center has to feel different than a service center. In a service center, the emphasis is on consistency. In a sales center, the emphasis has to be on variety to sustain a high level of energy, excitement, and enthusiasm. And sales contests are a great way to do this. Another approach that works well is to run a series of sales campaigns. Now, a sales campaign is simply a short-term focus on a particular product, a particular prospect, or a particular type of interaction. At the end of the campaign, the sales results provide a new sense of what's possible. The last tip is to continually challenge your own sales strategy as a way of driving continuous improvement in your organization. There are two ways to do this. Single loop learning involves taking a systematic approach to improving performance. This means applying the principles of performance management to help every representative continue to take concrete steps toward achieving and exceeding goals and expectations. It's also important to continuously identify emerging best practices and to share these practices throughout the organization. Double loop learning involves periodically taking a step back to reassess your sales strategy and, when appropriate, to revise it. This periodic reassessment will help you and your team maximize the potential of your customer interactions. So, here's a recap of the 8 tips for a service-to-sales transformation. As we said at the outset, you have to accomplish a complete change of culture and mindset at every level of the organization. But as I think you've probably seen, this change is particularly important and particularly challenging for the first and second line managers who need to become effective sales coaches. Let's just quickly review some of the challenges that are facing these managers. Most of your first and second line managers came up through the organization but did not sell when they were representatives, so they need to learn sales skills. They need to learn sales leadership and coaching skills. They need to become effective change leaders. They need to allocate about 50% of their time to coaching. And this can't be just reporting results or cheerleading. They have to actually help representatives develop new skills. They need to learn how to coach during practice through training, team meetings, and one-on-one development sessions. And they need to learn how to coach during the game to guide representatives who are talking with customers and help them actually make sales. Now, I'm very excited to be participating in this webinar with Matt Katz and the team from Merced Systems because in the years that we've worked together, I've seen how performance management software can be a huge help in supporting the effective sales coaching that is so essential for a service-to-sales transformation. In this portion of today's session, I'd like to highlight some very specific challenges that we've observed and invite Matt to share with you some of the technology solutions that can help you address these challenges. Now, in a service-to-sales transformation, managers should spend at least 50% of their time coaching for improved performance. But how do they allocate that time to maximize the impact of their coaching? In many organizations where we've worked, coaches are expected to spend most of their time with their poorest performers. In other companies, coaches are expected to spend the same amount of time with everyone. But as you can imagine, neither of these approaches serves to maximize impact. Matt, talk with us a little about how performance management software can help companies allocate their coaching time more effectively.
Thanks, Andy. One of the easiest ways for us to support this change in the allocation of their time is to expose just how much time is being spent per employee or employee segment. One of our property casualty insurance customers allocated their time differently, as shown in this chart. They actually separated the time between A, B, C, D, and new hire performers. In allocating that time away from the low performers and increasing the amount of time on their B and C performers, they were able to coach those who responded best to coaching, focus on best practice content, improve their effectiveness in delivering coaching sessions, and help their transformation from service to sales. And it's in this measurement of coaching time and reallocating it that we can be particularly effective in charting a course in this transformation.
Well, you know, I particularly like the fact that not only are they allocating their time where it can be most effective, but that's reinforcing for the coaches too, because if they're spending all their time with people who are not really improving, they're not so motivated to engage in coaching. Now, we've seen a number of service-to-sales initiatives that have been significantly handicapped by the lack of current performance information at the service rep level. Representatives may need to wait a month to get key performance metrics, and they may depend on their supervisors to provide that information. And some organizations have underperformed because they didn't create an appropriate, balanced scorecard or have not helped their reps to understand and interpret the metrics they receive. So, Matt, show us how performance management software enables companies to share performance information and drive accountability at the rep level.
Absolutely, Andy. As you can imagine, this is one of our core value propositions, delivering the data that is personal, focused on the correct metrics, and clearly actionable, and that explains these metrics in a way that a frontline employee or service agent can clearly chart or make progress in transforming from a service to a sales conversation. Here's a small screenshot of the metrics that are delivered each day to that frontline agent. They can see their rank among peers. They can see how this information changes day in and day out from prior days, and start to correct themselves or at least understand how they're changing over time. It's this easy self-awareness that can be very effective in helping the frontline agents understand the priorities and metrics that they're to be accountable for.
Yeah, and we've seen that's had a huge impact when people receive daily performance information. It really makes a difference and enables them to self-monitor and self-correct their performance much more quickly. Okay, now we mentioned that in a service-to-sales transition, many managers need to coach a function that they themselves did not perform when they were frontline representatives. Because managers are not necessarily skilled salespeople, they may have trouble identifying strengths and weaknesses, and they may have trouble interpreting the data they receive from the quality assurance team that monitors and evaluates calls. So, Matt, what are some of the ways that performance management software can help coaches identify strengths and opportunities so they can prioritize their coaching actions?
Andy, this is where the software can make a huge difference and actually handle much of the heavy lifting of prioritizing the day as a supervisor. A supervisor is often saddled with many priorities and projects, and this is by providing simple, actionable views that describe who is it that the system recommends they might coach, on what topic, and for what period of time, and what behaviors are affecting the entire team so that they can leverage those particular topics in team meetings or as part of group development sessions. It's this making the tough job of trading off those precious moments working on a particular team member or working on a particular segment of the team that can make a huge difference in the execution of your coaching plans and really help you chart the course in transitioning from a random delivery of coaching topics and a random delivery of coaching time to a more structured and guided and focused coaching delivery program.
Yeah, and if you consider the fact that time is the coach's greatest asset, then the ability to prioritize their coaching actions is hugely valuable. Along the same lines, Matt, we talked earlier about the fact that there are significant differences between evaluation and coaching. One critical difference is that evaluation needs to address every aspect of job performance, while coaching achieves small wins by working on one area at a time. Can we advance to the next slide, please? In a service-to-sales transition, managers often struggle with this distinction, and their coaching sessions may turn into general discussions of performance rather than targeted efforts to achieve specific improvements. So, Matt, show us how performance management software can help managers define a clear focus for their coaching conversations.
Well, one of the ways the software can actually improve our focus and provide the coach with reminders on the current coaching topic priorities is by presenting them the list of topics that are most frequently or intended to be the highest priority in those coaching sessions. It's this list of objection handling or cross-selling or upsell skills or even being able to make a confident close that can make a huge difference in teaching a service agent to learn the ways of selling in that process. Exploring the behaviors associated with the transformation, helping the coaches to focus each one of their sessions and remind them about the topics that will make them effective in this transformation. We can put some of the guardrails on the bowling lane, so to speak, to keep them from coaching on topics that are beyond the scope of this transformation or at least not relevant to making this transformation occur.
Yeah, and I've seen firsthand with some of your clients how this is hugely valuable in transforming that coaching discussion from just a general conversation about overall performance to something that's really focused on the specific steps that a representative needs to take to improve. Another area of opportunity, if coaches are committed to making sales a way of life, they need to provide representatives with opportunities to build their skill and knowledge when they're not talking with customers. As I mentioned earlier, team meetings, training sessions, and one-on-one development are all effective ways to do this. But to be successful, the coaches need easy access to a variety of resources and tools that they can use in these development situations. Now, Matt, I've been really impressed with the work that you and your team have done around the best practice library. Talk a little about how you're providing coaches with easy access to the resources they need.
Thanks, Andy. Yes, the best practice library is one of our big differentiators. It's that easy reference access that can make the huge difference to whether training courses, online reference materials, intranet information gets leveraged in the appropriate context. The best practice library organizes those links and content in a way that ties it directly to the coaching process, connected to a particular behavior or to a coaching topic. The coach is presented with a number of suggestions on content that would be relevant in those coaching conversations, along with suggested activities or exercises that will improve the delivery of skill sessions and knowledge transfer to the agent. It's this best practice library that makes the job of coaching that much easier when you've got resources that are already proven to work within your organization readily at their fingertips.
Yeah, and I love the fact that you link it right back to the coaching topic, because in so many organizations where I've worked, The issue is not that there aren't resources available. It's that there are too many resources and they're too hard to find. And so by providing easy access to the resource and linking it back to the specific coaching topic, I've been super impressed with what I've seen from the best practice library. Now, any coaching session should conclude with a plan of action that answers 4 critical questions. Who will do what, by when, and how will we follow up to assure success? In many organizations, there are opportunities for representatives to actually continue their development in between formal coaching sessions. So, Matt, show us how some of your clients are helping reps to take on more responsibility and drive their own development in between coaching sessions with their managers.
Thanks, Andy. One of the key methods we've developed with one of our telecommunications clients helped them structure a root cause analysis process where they could go through a fairly simple decision tree and understand what would be the most useful resource for that agent or for them to pursue on their own. It's by answering a few simple questions, we can direct them to the appropriate level of guidance, whether it's through self-diagnosis, through skill enhancement, through particular tool training, or even just sitting side by side with a top performer with a particular focus or mind to attend to. It's with any one of these resources, you want to make sure that they're aligned to where the learner or where the agent is in their development cycle. And it's with this simple set of tools that you can guide the appropriate decision and the appropriate resource to be applied.
Yeah, and I just love the fact that you're encouraging and helping representatives to take on responsibility for their own development, and that's been very, very exciting to see. It was movie mogul Sam Goldwyn who famously said that an oral agreement isn't worth the paper it's written on, and I think the same thing can be said of coaching plans. Now, we've seen many organizations where the effectiveness of coaching was significantly limited by the fact that managers didn't have an easy way to document their coaching discussions and their action plans. So, Matt, talk a little about the solutions that you're providing to clients.
Part of what we're able to provide is a thorough documentation of the coaching conversations, so that oral contract or that conversation isn't just left to memory. It's about documenting the list of sessions, the topics that were covered, the paper path that helps us all remember what was it that we learned with each one of those sessions. It's about being able to make both parties accountable for the follow-through and action and development associated with each one of those sessions. And by providing an online resource that takes the paper of, or what would have otherwise been captured on paper, and moves it into an accessible resource to everybody on the network that can be very powerful in charting your course in transforming coaching. Making all of these sessions available for future reference as they transfer between teams or as a new priority emerges, we can see how many different coaching sessions were conducted on the topics that were a priority for the company. And did that help us accelerate the transformation for any particular team or any particular agent?
You mentioned transfer between teams, and that's a huge benefit of having this capability, because I've just seen so many organizations where if you did move a representative to a new manager, they had to start over from the start. There was no development history. So having this capability is a tremendous benefit. And finally, we talked earlier about challenging your sales strategy by periodically engaging in single loop and double loop learning. I think that in the same way, it's important to periodically challenge your coaching strategy and to kind of step back and evaluate the effectiveness of your coaching approach. I've been very excited to see how performance management software can greatly simplify this process of inquiry. Matt, would you show us what this looks like for some of your clients, please?
Sure. This is part of the most exciting elements that we're able to pull together here, tying the coaching activity to metric movement, being able to help the organization see the investment in coaching time and how it pays off in the returns of its business, whether it's increased revenues or increased customer satisfaction. We want to be able to make the process of evaluating coaching as clear and transparent as we do with other systems. Whether we're coaching the coach through a supervisor coaching plan, we want to be able to give the coaching feedback that's needed to improve our coaching process. We want to be able to give the supervisor direct and observable feedback about the methods they're using to improve the performance of their agents. And Merced can do that with both the software forms that collect that feedback and save it for future reference, or through graphs and images that present the data associated with coaching activity and coaching change so that we can evaluate coaching effectiveness quite readily on the system.
You know, I think that's great, and that's really the first approach that I've seen for effectively measuring how are we converting activity to effectiveness. You know, and I've just been super impressed with what you and the Merced team have done on that.
Well, thanks very much, Andy. This has been a great session. We've got some time here for a few questions. We've got a couple of questions that were submitted from the audience. Let's just scan through here and see if we can pick one or two that we might address. If you're participating in the live session, you can still submit questions to Andy through the WebEx Q&A panel, and we do hope to have enough time to address each of them. Let's take a fairly straightforward one here. We're considering this transformation, service to sales. When's the ideal time to implement software? Before, during, or after? Well, that might actually be a good question for me to jump into.
Yeah, well, I have an opinion on this, Matt, but I think I'm going to let you go first. It's your business. Go ahead, and then I'll weigh in afterwards.
Sure. Well, there's no time like the present. I think we've worked with clients that were just starting this transformation, and by installing the software, it helped them to focus their efforts on the right metrics, with the right program design, with the right support for management change and change practices that were going to occur along with the deployment of the software. So I'll advocate that the software can accelerate your transformation in this regard, and that by making the decisions associated with deploying it, you're actually starting your progress towards thinking about this problem differently and helping your organization to align behind those new priorities. Andy, did you want to add to that?
Well, just to agree with you, you know, we talked at the beginning about assessing your organization's readiness for change, and one of the things that we look at is what sort of performance culture is present in the organization. And what I've seen on some of the projects that we've worked on together is that even in a pure service environment, in bringing in the kind of performance management software that you provide through Merced really helps to create a much stronger focus and orientation on performance, on driving and improving performance relative to the specific metrics that you need, and it starts to initiate and accelerate that process of culture change, which is so critical in a service to sales transition. So I'm going to agree that I would say before.
Excellent. I've scanned ahead here just to look for a few other questions that would be of interest to the broader audience. It looks like somebody was paying pretty keen attention to the sales strategy work you presented earlier. Let's see, it says, would you give some examples of different sales strategies and explain why one might be more effective than another?
Okay. Well, I'll try to do this pretty high level and would certainly invite conversation offline if there's more or deeper interest. You know, we said that sales strategy is really about, you know, what products are you selling, to whom, when or under what circumstances, and how. And I'll start with the how question. You know, we would say that all sales activity occurs along a spectrum where at one end you have what we would call product selling, which is a simple but enthusiastic recommendation for a product. And at the other end of the spectrum, we would have something that's broadly called consultative selling, an approach that begins by asking questions to understand the customer's needs or goals and then tailoring a solution to meet those. The issue of sales strategy depends on, what is going to be most effective in your environment. If you have a simple product, it's easy to understand, and it has widespread applicability, just about all of your customers could benefit from it, that would be a case where you might want to initially try out a simple product selling approach, something like you resolve the customer's service question and then transition to an enthusiastic recommendation for the featured product. So you might say, great, I'm so happy we could help you with that. Hey, while you're talking on the line, I just wanted to let you know we're having a special on this product. Let me explain how it can help you. And because the product is simple, it doesn't take that long to explain. Because it has widespread applicability, you hope for a pretty high take rate. And that approach could generate a high return on your investment. On the other hand, if you have a product that's more complicated, or you have a product that appeals to a narrower segment of your customer base, taking a product selling approach is going to be hugely inefficient because you're going to be spending a lot of time talking to people who aren't really good prospects for your product or service. So that's a case where you need to take a more consultative approach, and the question would be, when should you take that approach? It might be that based on customer record information or a clue that came up in the conversation with the customer, you would then transition to ask a few questions and go on to recommend the product. So those are two examples at either end of the spectrum, and as I say, I'd be happy to discuss this in more detail offline.
Yeah, I really like the picture you painted there, Andy, and I've seen in our deployments of the software how the metrics that are chosen to support, whether it's a product-related strategy or a consulting-oriented strategy, the metrics can drive a lot of the attention span, along with the incentives and motivations to have the consultant or have the agent learn these techniques and apply them in each conversation with clients. So very exciting to see the range of content and really material that's available to help guide people through those choice of selling strategies.
So can I jump in on something there, Matt?
Sure.
You talked about metrics, and I'm going to make just a little plug, as I mentioned earlier, for a balanced scorecard. Because I have definitely seen organizations that have created unintended consequences and have driven representatives to behaviors that they really didn't want to do because of the metrics that they set up. And so that process of aligning the metrics so that they support your overall sales and service strategy, I think you're absolutely right about that. And I know that's something that is part of your consulting. You focus a lot of attention on, I think, justifiably.
Yes. If you don't get the metrics right, it's very tough to end up in the right place. Good. I see another question here came in. Let's try this one. It says, can this succeed in a unionized workplace? I assume by succeed, this is the whole service to sales transformation. Can you really make that work in a unionized workplace?
Well, that's an interesting question. And some of the earliest attempts that we were involved in were, in fact, in unionized workplaces. I think that, in general, I would say that it seems like labor relations that have changed somewhat over the last, 10, 15 years. To me, the bigger question is not, is it a unionized workplace? It kind of goes back to the first question we were answering. Is it a performance-oriented workplace? If there is a strong focus on performance and sharing results and looking at the behaviors that drive those results, the union issue to me seems secondary. Now, I do think it's important in any large-scale transformation like a service-to-sales transformation to engage all of your partners fully, and this is something that if you do have a union in your workplace, I think it would be important to talk with them early on and get their understanding and buy-in. Have you Have you had some experience? I know you've had more international experience than I have. Have you come across this situation in countries outside of the U.S.?
Absolutely. I mean, there are a number of different international environments where the workplace is unionized and you still need to deliver a blended or hybrid service and sales experience. And so it's in those particular environments where the performance orientation does make a huge difference. Do they feel that they're accountable for their time? Do they feel that the experience that their customers walk away from is important? That often gets reflected in the culture and values of the corporation and can make a huge difference whether it's unionized or not as to whether people respond to the messages around performance management and whether they're going to be motivated to improve and deliver both that improved customer experience and to make good on sales opportunities that probably would make the customer happier with the company as well. So I've seen both in the unionized and non-unionized work environments that this really can thrive.
Well, I'm glad you've had that experience, and I would just reinforce the last thing that you said, because I do believe that it's not a question of service or sales. And as we talked a little bit about at the beginning, some of the things that happen when you are providing great service to customers naturally lead to sales, and some of the things that happen when you're selling to customers create a more positive service experience and loyalty and likelihood to recommend.
Great points. So it looks like we have just time for one or two more questions here. Let me see if I can scan for one. Here's one. Well, let's say this is asking, what are the biggest mistakes you've seen companies make that have tried to transition from service to sales? Maybe I'll just take a quick cut at that one. The change management, you highlighted a number of great points in the presentation today about leading from the top. And I'd have to say that of all the different projects I've been exposed to, when that leadership is absent or has delegated the transformation to other parts of the organization and is not personally present and visible in the transition, that can really make the change effort hard. I'd say it's so reinforcing and so enabling to have leadership that leads from the front, is visible in their sponsorship, is active in their commitment to development, is right there on the front lines learning what this transformation means to each of the employees. That can make a huge difference in accelerating this transition. So I'm going to put my vote in for, on the change management front, start with your leader and make sure that the leader is on board to drive this all the way through. You want to add to any of that?
Well, totally agree with you on that, Matt. And I'll just come back to what we said at the beginning. I mean, that was really the impetus for writing the book, because we had been involved in a number of, I would say, less successful attempts where the whole process of leading change had been delegated to, for example, the training organization. And that's asking them to do something that they're not really capable of doing. They can support, but they can't lead that transformation. And so recognizing the role of the senior leadership team and taking a systematic approach, as we talked about earlier, something that addresses people, processes, systems, and metrics. If you're looking at all of those key elements, then you're just much more likely to have a successful transformation.
Excellent. I don't want to end on a negative note, but there is a naysayer out there. Is it really realistic to this last question? Is it realistic for frontline managers to allocate 50% of their time to coaching? We're nowhere close to that. So we need a little pep talk for this individual, Andy.
Well, I don't know. Do you want to start with that one?
I could start. I think it's absolutely realistic. I think one of the challenges companies struggle with is to define coaching and what that time means. And quite often they find that their supervisors are spending quite a bit of time pulling reports and researching the many metrics that they'd like to coach on or uncover to discover behaviors that are there to be coached on. And so that quite often is consuming quite a bit of their day just to get an accurate picture of their current team's performance. So I think it's absolutely possible. It helps to have the software present to take that heavy lifting and to give the manager back the face time that they need. Take away the desk time and turn that into face time that they can spend with their individual agents in developing them. So I absolutely believe it's possible. I just think that we have to take a concerted look at what's consuming that supervisor's time today and how much of that can we convert to quality face time with their employees. Would you add to anything there?
Yeah, no, I think you're right that the software can certainly help, and we've seen instances where literally you've saved many hours a week that had previously been required just to pull the data so that the supervisors could share performance information with their people. But I think there's a mindset change that has to happen in the organization as a whole, and I know you and I were just talking, a week or two ago about that McKinsey article that you had shared a couple of years back about unlocking the potential of frontline managers, and they had a couple of very interesting case studies there of organizations that did this, that really redefined the focus of the first line manager and achieved fantastic results
Thanks,
by
Andy.
doing that. So I think that this is to make that commitment can be incredibly powerful and can really transform the entire culture of an organization if you free up your frontline managers to really coach and develop your people. Excellent.
Andy, this has been great content, really great questions from our audience. I want to thank everybody for their time. I want to emphasize, if you missed any part of this session and like to review a recording of any of our Merced webinars, we'll ask that you please visit our website at mercedsystems.com and select the resources under the Community tab for direct access. We've also presented our email addresses here on the page. We'd encourage you to send us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. We'd love to know what ideas you've had in trying to apply any and all of this material, or visit the Merced communities via the social networking links below. We're really happy that you joined us today. We'd like to thank you again, and we hope you have a great day. Thanks very much, Andy.
Thank you, Matt. It's been great participating with you today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, everyone.